Right, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time you're watching this video. It's a welcome to another episode of Taura Tinzwe, where your perspective matters, and we try and do interviews on this episode, on every episode actually, with normal people doing extraordinary things in their lives, especially when it comes to the family setup. And today we have one such special person. His name is Gigaba. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I appreciate the time.
It's a privilege and honor to have you. We know you're a busy man. Even if you were here, the phone was ringing. Why? Are you selling something, sir, that we should be selling SAP?
I'm definitely selling.
But yes, I think as you probably would have known, our show deals really with familial issues, particularly the father relationship. And you recently have become a father yourself. How's that experience been for you, Zasma?
It's amazing, I must say. It's one amazing experience that I'll never, every moment I've had with my son so far, from the beginning, the first time I saw him, until today, I'll never take that away.
Sure.
Yeah, so it's hard to describe in words, but it's wonderful, man. It's challenging, it's inspiring, it's adventure, it's a whole lot of things in between, but I love every moment.
And I can imagine, because now you were a youth just the other day. We met with the Shangananis, we were running around, blood on fire.
Sure.
Got married very recently again and had a child. So how's that transition for you been from being a very energetic and happy youth man to now suddenly being a husband, family man, and a father?
According to my wife, nothing has really changed.
So you're still as loud, I think.
I'm still as loud, as energetic as I can.
Sure.
Especially because of my son.
Okay.
I think my son has added a lot of energy. It's funny when you talk about energy, when we did not plan, I'm not sure about other families, but we did not plan that we're going to have a child this soon. Okay. So in my mind, I wanted to just get to know my wife, just enjoy her for like 3 years before, you know, and then life happened, and then we had my son. But we would talk about children and stuff. So then I would say when we get a boy, he's going to take my energy and he's going to take your looks. And exactly that happened.
Okay,
you know? So the transition from, you know, being young, vibrant, definitely there was a transition. Yeah. There's definitely a big change that takes place naturally. But there are certain things you also, as well as a young father, you need to do to transition well, you know, from just hanging out with the gents, you know, from what you say, what you eat, what you do with your life, because now you have this, you know, person that calls you dad, that you're responsible for, that you need to think. So the transition was great, but not a lot has changed. I'm still young, I'm still energetic, but of course my responsibilities now and my choices, my decisions are much different.
And I think you mentioned there that, you know, as a young father, I'm trying to think now that young aspect of it. There are a lot of young men out there who are afraid to commit, firstly, to getting married, because they pull out all these stats about the negative stuff that happens in the institution and the divorce rates that are so high, etc.
Sure.
How have you found the experience thus far of marriage and, of course, fatherhood? And what would you want to say potentially to a young person out there who's fearing taking this step into the next zone and next phase of their lives, as it were?
I think for me, I wouldn't necessarily blame the guys or the boys or the men out there who are just fearing marriage, because I do fear my wife. You know, but it's good fear.
So Beyonce's right,
you know,
runs the world.
You know, you need to have some level of respect and this awe, you know, for an institution like marriage.
Sure.
And I think, you know, me, I have experience, but it's just 2 years. So in the 2 years of being married, I've realized that if there are certain choices that I made that I was not pleased with, that I feel, man, if I just did 1, 2, 3, my marriage would have been better. You know, so for the guys that are scared, I would say get a brother. You know, get a brother. Speak to your dad if you have your dad. Speak to somebody that you consider, that you trust. you know their life, their integrity, you know their family setup, and just get different perspective. Don't just look into the internet, because
Sure.
of course internet there's a lot. Find a person that you feel you have some level of relationship with,
Yeah.
and then you speak to them about marriage, and you will find out that it is such a great thing. It is such a wonderful thing, especially when you found a person that buys into your vision, into what you want to become as a young man, what you want to do with your career, with your gifting, with your skills, and that person motivates you, encourages you, and inspires you to do those things. Bona, go for it.
And one of the things that really comes out strongly, sorry, in the book that I wrote on Fathering Sons,
Yes.
is the issue of modeling and getting assistance, like you just mentioned
Yes,
now, from
yes.
the people that have gone in
Yes, yes.
Now, you mentioned there, of course, that it's important to get that kind of help and to speak to these people who have been there before us, particularly, especially your dad.
Yeah.
How important, or how has the process been having your dad on your side and assisting that? How has that helped you become a better father, you think?
Let me be honest again with you in terms of my dad is a traditional man, great father. I will not take that away from him. Great father. But I think I was raised traditionally, but me, because of my calling, as worship leader, loving church, loving God, and my dad being himself and the way he grew up without a dad.
Okay.
And he just I came into his life, and then whatever principles he did, even until today, I'm asking myself, God, you're not a God who just, gives wisdom to only the people that are saved.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that my dad taught me that I haven't seen in other believers, of men, so my dad modeled, without knowing his modeling, marriage and fatherhood to me.
That's good.
In such a great way. From the way he would shout at me, from the way he would love my mother, the way he would provide, and his work ethic, all of those things, all of them, they were for us.
Sure.
For the house, for the family. So that for me, I think I'm committing today to Roxanne because of my dad's way of loving my mother. Him and my mother, they are best friends. And I always tell my wife, but you know what, I want to be your best friend, man. I remember, because I'm the firstborn at home.
Okay.
So there was a time when every day when we sleep, I would sleep in the other room because we lived in the forum, and my dad and my mother would be sleeping on the other room.
Yeah.
They always talk. They always have something to say to each other. I did not understand that until today, or until this season that I'm in marriage, and I realized it's so important to communicate with your wife and make your wife your best friend.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
So which is something that I'm growing into. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. So he really modeled such a great life for me to be a great father now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right, so I'm glad, you kind of mentioned all these things that you've learned from your father, because these are really what the cornerstone of what my book is about,
Yes.
as the guys have given it to us. And I think for you as a firstborn son now, and all the lessons that you're saying you learned from your dad up until thus far, which are obviously helping you now become a better dad to your son, are there 2, 3, 4 things or principles perhaps that you'd want to say, guys, I saw my dad 1, 2, 3, and now I'm going to pass these very things to my son after me into the next generation?
Sure. Just on top of my head, I remember I'm from Tsakane in the East Rand, right? But we also lived in Mlazi, in Devon. Etegwini, yeah, just for maybe like 3 years. So my dad was working in a factory setup.
Okay.
Every Friday, my dad used to take me to work. I don't know how did he get to take me every Friday. But until today, I have the picture of, those moments. So I can say maybe one of the things that I took out from there, that man wanted to show me his world.
Okay.
And maybe the second thing, he was present. you know, because when I'm there, I'll be right next to him. I'll be right, and he'll be showing me things that he was doing there at the factory. I don't remember exactly what he was working on or working with, or the type of work that he does, because he's a technician. He fixes aircons and fridges and all of that. But at the time, man, I was very small, and I don't even remember what I learned. But that man was present.
Sure.
Just that moment, I knew every time I was excited to go with him. So for me, just his presence and him showing me his world, I think those are the things as a young father that you need to do. Show your son what you do. Show your son the world. Let him see, you know, who you are. And I'm not saying like take him like my dad, because times are different now. But you know, open up that space. I think that also another thing is, okay, but this one, my dad did not know that I'm learning.
Okay.
The whole marriage thing. And I think now we have a much better relationship than we did then. Now it's easy for me to speak to my dad about marriage because I'm married. But I also wish sometimes that before I got married, I would have these talks with him. You know, I would ask him questions, which I did not have that because I did not know and he didn't know. So the other principles that look at your dad as a young father, you know, look at your dad and you will see things that he will do for your family that you can learn.
Okay.
So what you need to take out on what I'm saying is, don't just look at him for what he did, but just go deeper. Go deeper. Go think of the stories and you will see that, man, this man is wise, he's smart, he's not just present, he's available, you know. And
that's good. And you know why I say this? A lot of men in this country right now, and I think that speaks to pretty much most of this continent as well and around the world, don't grow up with the present, firstly, and secondly, available. So those two things are very important to shaping the mind of a man, shaping the identity of your boy, so that by the time he becomes a man himself, in fact, for most of the problems that we have in society today, you realize that it's actually because dad was either not present or unavailable emotionally to time. So I would say then you kind of got the best of the model. You kind of got the best version of what we want to encourage as good fatherhood out there.
Sure.
Now, I'm looking at you becoming a father. Of course, as a firstborn, I'm sure you've got the brand in terms of discipline and, you know, because...
the expectations, man. The expectations.
I'm trying to find you, shape you into a certain particular person. Now, looking at where you're going now as a dad, you know, as a young father, going forward with your son and the lessons that you're trying to teach to him from what you've learned from your dad.
Okay.
I would say now, what's the most important thing, especially when it comes to the relationship between him, like you said, you latently learned these things of how to become a good husband and a good father without him having to teach you and to coach you, you see. What is the biggest lesson you'd say, besides of course the best friend thing that you mentioned earlier, that you'd want to give to your child so that he can learn to love his wife as you love yours, as your dad loved your mother?
I think that's a loaded question. However, I think I would want to give my son, firstly, just as I am, in terms of being honest with my sonhood. The world out there is both beautiful and challenging. And there are certain things that I've done good and there are certain things that I didn't. And out of that, help him figure out, you know, to some extent on his own, and find ways of how to connect with him from his side, you know, because I think those were my struggles. Because when I left home when I was 18, and then I came to Pretoria, and when I left home, and it's not that this thing is bad, it's just how my dad was raised up. He didn't communicate. My dad did not sit down with me and say, you're going to Pretoria.
Sure.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Expect,
you know, he just gave me money and like, there you go. And we left. And when I came to Pretoria, I called my dad, you know, and my friends, they got calls from their mothers and from their families, you know, how did you go? How's Pretoria? My dad did not do anything. And now what I'm understanding is because he just didn't know. You understand?
Yeah.
So now that I know, I need to make sure that what I know, I invested in my son.
Yes.
You know, okay, communication is very important. Dude, this is where you're going. I see this is what what do you want to do? Ask the right questions, you know, ask if you're okay, check what he desiring or expecting from different areas of his life without me putting my expectations first.
Sure.
Check him, you know. So for me, that is what I want to give my son. I want to give him some level of liberty, because, you know, it depending on the age as well. There's moments where it's going to be just like that, you know, black and white. But as he grows, I want to give him some liberty to speak to me. I want to create that environment for him. It must be easy for him to say, Dad, I messed up.
Sure.
I need you. Dad, Bona, I want to be the first person he calls when he gets, you know, when he falls in love, when he goes through manhood changes, you know, all of that. Because, Tina, we did not get that, not because our dads were bad. It's because they just did not know how to relate with us, because they didn't get it from their fathers. And can I tell you, I learned that late.
Sure.
That my dad did not, after I've left my house, you know. And so those are the things I want to give myself to my son, man. And that liberty for him to be himself. Of course, then I'll come in as a guide, as a father that I definitely also want to be.
When did this hit you? I would say you're saying now that you found it out late, you know, that this is how he grew up, and hence he acted in a particular manner.
Sure.
A lot of guys out there are angry at their dads. They don't understand why their dads did not do this, or were not like this, and they don't put that connection in terms of the modeling that potentially their fathers did not receive that kind of instruction that they want to get from their fathers. Now, with all that level of unforgiveness, and you being a minister and a man in ministry, have you, I would say, seen the negative impact thereof potentially with the guys that you were leading and then teaching as a youth minister, that they come from these dads, households without their fathers, and as a result of that, you as a man of the cloth suffer because of the 1, 2, 3 things that they are doing, and because about Toland. It's something that you experienced in your ministry by any chance?
I wish I could just remember stories, but I know that around my circle of friends, because I have friends who do this similar stuff that I'm doing, ministry, passionate about Jesus and all of that. We definitely did experience that, because not every young man that came or that we had an opportunity to minister to, they had a great relationship with their dads.
Sure.
You know, and what I've seen is that most of the young men, they will trust their girlfriends more than their family or even their friends. So they would direct the most important part of their lives to this one particular person who cannot even be able at the time to carry you emotionally when that situation needs a father. You know. So, and I think you asked the question as you were talking, that when did that thing hit me? It hit me when I started really to get to know the Lord, you know, and there's something that knowing Jesus and knowing the Father, that it's like Father God helps you to understand your Father. And someone said to me, you know, now that you're getting married and you're having a baby, you're going to understand the love of the Father. You know, so then I started to realize, oh man, I need to forgive my dad, and I need to let go of the expectations that I have of him, because now I'm in Pretoria and I meet great guys like Ronald, and I see that they treat me differently. They see something in me. They see a gift in me. You know, I've always been a church boy, and it's amazing that my dad is not a believer as such, you know. So I don't come from a family where you can say a Christian family, However, my dad modeled without him knowing that he's modeling principles of the Lord or principles of the Bible.
Sure.
But for me to see that, I had to know Jesus.
Yes,
You know,
yes.
I had to be connected to a community of men like you that have an understanding and an experience with the Lord and also with other father figures surrounding in their lives. So I hope I'm answering the question.
Definitely.
But
That
yeah,
makes sense.
yeah, that's where I was. So it hit me then with knowing God really also just took me back. He had to take me back and say, you must look at your dad differently. Look at your dad from my lenses.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
And know that I'm working with your dad to make sure that you become the man
Come on.
that you are. Otherwise, you would have not got in there. So that is why I'm always grateful for my dad. I do care. I would want him to go to church. There was a time I wish like I would minister and my dad would be present there, or I would see him minister. But I realized that's not God's desire. He wanted me to have a quality relationship with him, and he still wants it now.
Sure.
You know, church is going to be something later on. He wants a quality relationship now. I can look at my dad and be proud of him and the man that he has made me to become, or his contribution to the man I'm becoming and I'm going to still become. Yeah.
You learned now these principles from your relationship with God, as you say,
Yes.
that highlighted and showed you the inefficiencies or deficiencies perhaps in the relationship that you had with your father.
Okay,
and
yes.
where you needed to forgive and where you needed to move on and understand
Yeah.
that, you know what, Papa also, because he never got this, you are getting that understanding. You are in a more enlightened position.
Yes, sir.
I want to find out now, is there something in particular that you would see as a differentiator between what you expected from your father and what you got that you would want to change in now going forward in the relationship with your son?
Yeah, I think it's going back to communication. Yeah, man, as our culture, man, doesn't really communicate. And I'm not just saying just a phone call, like real sit down and get into the mind of your son.
Yeah.
You know, or you as a son get into the mind of your father, you know, vice versa, man. Like pick your son's brain. You know, my son is one now, so I'm picking his brain through his movements and his repetitive habits, you know. So I see that, okay, there's certain things that he doesn't like, and I want to keep that relationship very, very strong, because I want him to be able to tell me, you know, stuff, and I don't want him to think twice, because when I was growing up, man, every time when something happens, you think twice before you tell your dad. So you are selective in your, you know, I'd rather go to my mother because I know there, you know, I'll get, the response will be softer, calm.
Sure.
But from my dad, because of his expectations, because firstly, he's not expecting that from me, so the likelihood I won't tell him. So I'll use my mother, and my mother will send the information in a different format, you know, to my dad.
So it was almost like a midway communication post. Okay.
So for me, communication, availability, presence, you know, and as a father, be open to learn from your son, because the way the world is changing, principles are not changing, but the world is changing. Methods are changing.
Sure.
You know, get to know your son.
Okay.
Get to know your son. Get to be in his world. That's the other thing as well. You know me as a singer. You know, I didn't know that my dad was a singer.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
And he was singing Umpakana, but Dala, you know. So I've never seen photos, I've never seen a video. Okay, maybe there was no video at that time.
Yeah.
But I've never really experienced my dad, the singing part of his dad. And now my passion is singing, you know. And I had expectations that he must be at every show.
Yeah.
I've invited my parents in one of their shows, and they never came. And not because they don't want to.
Sure.
Because I'm only understanding that now. It's because to them was like, it's just a show. You know. For instance, me, I was never fetched from school.
Sure.
So those things must happen now. I need to fetch that guy.
Okay.
Of course, my work, my life, but I want to make sure that, you know what, I fetch this man and this young boy, and then I get to pick his brain in the traveling, in the working from there to say, okay, what's happening at school? Who does what? My dad, he never knew anything about my school except my report. You see how old I am? I'm even saying report because I don't know what they call it now.
Sure.
You know,
and
when I need money, you know, for certain things and trips, you know, but other than that, my life in primary and school, I didn't know how anyway, you know.
Probably he didn't know how either.
He didn't know how.
And I think the final question I want to ask you for this particular interview. Now, a lot of people potentially will be watching this video. Just imagine the whole world, you know, every man in the world out there is watching this video. What's the one message that you want to leave with them and say, this particular thing, guys, take care or take cognizance of this thing as it might do 1, 2, 3 going forward?
It's hard for me to say one thing, but forgive your dad. I think that's one thing, because I know that there's a lot of hurt, of pain out there because of our fathers. Forgive your dad, man. Release your dad from your own expectations and his expectations of you. Release them, free him from that, and find another perspective, but forgive him. I don't know how that will look like in your space, in your environment, but find a way to release him and forgive him. That's one thing, if you can just take away, because I had to do that a lot as well with my dad. And forgiveness to different people can be every day, you know, because you see your dad, then you are reminded, there's a memo, there's something, no, this guy wants me to do this, or maybe he's not even around anymore, maybe he has passed on, and you are still pushing and you are still doing certain things because you still want to meet his expectations. Release that, and if you can, and if you may, surrender that to the Lord. Surrender all those expectations, surrender all those pain, all those memories, good and bad, surrender them to the Lord and ask the Lord to show you, you know, what steps you can take, who you can talk to regarding that. And us as a nation, and particularly as black guys, let's find help. There's a help out there in terms of psychologists, therapists. Get help as you can. And I think God has provided so many people that are wise, that are smart, that can take us through a process that will help us see our fathers, and us as fathers see our sons, differently.
Important. Very important. I think, thank you very much. I think the forgiveness messages you've heard from yourself from this young, passionate father here is an important one. I think for wherever I speak, I always try and end with that to say, things have not happened as they should have. We have a list of things that we expect from our fathers. We have a list of expectations that we have from our fathers before us, which we never got. And as a result of that, we hold on to the bitterness and the anger that kind of results for those who had their dads present and those who had their dads absent. I dealt with that. And it's really one of the 4 core areas that my book talks about. So thank you for really bringing this up. I really want you to encourage you out there. You've heard it for yourself. Forgive. Very important. If you're going to break free from the past and move forward into a more positive future, let's let go of whatever our dads did to us before, and let's forgive them and release them, as the young man has said. Mr. Gigaba, I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure,
Thank you so much.
and honor.
I appreciate it. Thank you, guys. Hope you learned something.
Amen to that. Until we catch you at another next episode of Taura Tinzwe, this is Ronald signing out. Thank you.